This man had been searching his entire life for a huge UFO discovery, but when he actually found proof of it, it threatened his entire existence. This is the story of Albert K. Bender, the nation's top UFO investigator, whose relentless pursuit of the unknown led to a chilling encounter that threatened to end his research and his life forever. Born in Duryea, Pennsylvania, 1921, Albert K. Bender always had a fascination with science fiction and the paranormal. After serving as a dental technician in the U.S. Army Air Force during World War II, Bender settled with his mother and stepfather in Bridgeport, Connecticut, a place that was about to become the central hub of a UFO mystery. By the time Bender got to his 30s, the surge of alleged UFO sightings across America captivated him to transform the attic of his stepfather's house into his research lab. He was thoroughly convinced that these sightings were more than mere illusions, but he just needed to find a way to prove it to everyone else. So, in April 1952, Bender founded the International Flying Saucer Bureau, IFSB for short. It was a team of like-minded individuals who also had a thirst for the mysterious. With its inaugural meeting on May 15, 1952, the IFSB quickly became a hit, attracting members eager to uncover the truth behind the elusive lights in the sky, with their journal, the Space Review, being the major selling point. It was something that hadn't been done before, and Bender did his best to rein in a global network of enthusiasts and UFO researchers working to uncover the truth behind the UFOs and everything related to these mysterious sightings. They had branches in the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and basically all over the world. Keep in mind that this was during the Cold War, and it's crazy to think that different groups of people from these countries were united on their fascination with UFOs. Albert's investigation, which began with interest in the unknown, claimed that these UFOs were used by some beings who were part of an advanced alien civilization and were interested in human activities while visiting Earth. He also suggested that the flying saucers were not just spaceships, but a means to communicate with humans telepathically. And while that already sounds crazy, his most outrageous claim was that he was warned to stop his research or he would lose his life. According to reports, he was left shaken when he was visited by extraterrestrials, who he claims convinced him to stop his research and shut down the IFSB, which was one of the first private organizations to go into research about UFOs. He claimed that his encounter was part of a larger effort by these extraterrestrial entities to keep their existence and intentions hidden from the public. Now, let's hold on for a moment. How exactly did this all happen? You see, in 1952, back when the IFSB was still trending, he called its executive members to work on the first issue of the Space Review in October. The journal featured pictures of local and international sightings of UFOs, as well as articles about the UFO sightings even dating back to ancient times. It also featured theories and hypotheses on their origins and mission, including the possibility of a government cover-up, which piqued the attention of readers since it was the height of the Cold War and the government had been holding out secrets from them. The journal also shared updates on the IFSB's investigations, research, and public events, as well as in-depth interviews with expert witnesses and researchers in the field of UFOlogy, which is the study of UFOs. Additionally, it included reviews of books, films, and other media related to UFOs and extraterrestrial life, a section for readers' letters and questions, and a roundup of UFO-related news and stories away from mainstream media outlets. Shortly after the journal's release, Bender decided to treat himself to a movie. On his way home, he received a vertigo-like headache. He felt his ears were blocked, and he was being lifted off the ground, with a sensation, or rather a message saying, "Give up the IFSB." After hearing the message, Albert was free of the weird sensation, and he quickly ran home. As he approached his room, he noticed a blue light coming from under the door, which intensified until the entire doorframe glowed. Fearing a fire, he rushed to turn on the hallway light and opened the door to find a shimmering blue mass floating in the room, but when he turned on the light, there was nothing there. The room was super saturated, with the smell of sulfur causing his eyes to burn. Now, Bender thought this smell was coming from his oil heater, since it could release a sulfuric smell when turned on. But surprisingly, it was turned off, causing him to slightly panic. He then went over to open some windows, only to notice that some of his IFSB files on the desk were scattered and his radio was turned on, but no sound could be heard, which was very strange as he never forgets to turn off his radio before stepping out for the day. Eventually, after taking a look around, he finds that everything is in order and decides to call it a day, confused but also satisfied with the success of his journal. In November of that year, Bender would go to the movies again, and halfway through the movie, he had a weird feeling and felt like he was being watched. After taking a look around the scanty audience, he found no one suspicious, but moments later, the feeling persisted, and suddenly, he sensed a sinister presence to his right and saw a man standing and staring at him with glowing eyes. He blinked and the man vanished. Minutes later, the man appeared to his left, and Bender thought he was being paranoid, so he moved seats and tried shaking off the eerie feeling. However, the weird sensation returned, and this time, the man was sitting behind him, which caused him to finally report to a manager. But when they got there, they couldn't find the mysterious person. After a few moments, Bender decided he was done with the movie and all the theater shenanigans, so he took a walk home. On his way, he saw some new vinyl records at a store through the window. While going through the records, the familiar feeling returned, with Bender standing to see the glowing-eyed man beside him. Bender was distraught, with a strong sense of unease, believing the person wasn't human. He bolted toward a policeman and narrated all the strange events to them. The officer, faced with the absurdity of the situation, tried to calm him down, suggesting that it might be a prank. But Bender remained uneasy, heading back to his dark house and office, seemingly fleeing from his encounters for now. In January 1953, the IFSB executive staff, including Bender, called for a meeting on a better way to handle the recent influx of letters and reports concerning UFOs. They formed a department of investigation and adjourned for the day, feeling pleased with their progress. Bender escorted his colleagues to the door and decided to treat himself to some warm milk in the kitchen before calling it a night. As he poured his milk, he suddenly heard some footsteps upstairs. Thinking that someone must have forgotten their hat or belongings, he quickly ran up there to see who it was. As he got to the stairs, he saw that the door was open and the same bluish light was coming out through the doorway, but this time with a hazy outline. This made Bender afraid, but he mustered some courage and grabbed a broom to face his fears. As he walked up to it, he found out that there was a dark, shadowy figure similar to the one he saw in the cinema. He yelled at it, saying, "Cut the kidding and come out of there!" But part of the glow vanished, leaving two glowing eyes. Bender turned on the light and the eyes disappeared. Again, the place smelled like sulfur, so he opened the windows to air the place out. Bender looked around his room, and everything was exactly how he put it, except for the radio, which was turned on. So he put it off, and the image of the blue eyes flashed in his head. Not long after that, his encounters got more serious, as the IFSB planned an event called World Contact Day, popularly known in the UFO community as C-Day. It was more of a game, as participants would by 6 p.m. on the 15th of March, lay down and project a particular phrase telepathically, and if they noticed an increase in UFO activity in the coming days, they would know it was them. Sounds fun, right? Well, it didn't go so well for Bender, as at the time he laid on his bed to chant those words telepathically, he repeated it 3 times, and then he suddenly felt his body turn cold, and his head started to pound. He saw the blue light moving around inside his head. He smelled the sulfuric smell again and felt weightless. As he tried to shake the feeling off, he heard a large voice saying, "We have been watching you and your activities. Please be advised to discontinue delving into the mysteries of the universe." Bender tried to argue that they didn't mean anyone any harm. Instead, they just wanted answers. But the voice cuts him off and just tells him, "We'll be watching." Bender felt the weight of gravity return and opened his eyes to find himself back on his bed. His room was filled with a yellow mist, and a shadow resembling a human stood near his bed. But as he started to get up to investigate the shadow, it disappeared. He looks at the clock and sees that it is a few minutes past 6, so he assumes that he must have fallen asleep, and that must have been a dream. But his radio was turned on once again, which remained a mystery to him. A few months later, Bender went on a 2-week vacation to cool off and reset his mind. But when he got back, things got a little bit more interesting, or should I say frightening, for Albert K. Bender. On the day he got back, he was met with another mysterious encounter. As he opened his door, a wall of thick, sultry air hit him in the face, leading him to open the windows for ventilation. Everything seemed to be normal, except his radio, which was, you guessed it, turned on. As he got on the bed, he noticed that blue lights, similar to the ones he was familiar with, were revolving around his room. His head started pounding and was consumed by an ominous feeling. Immediately, he saw 3 dark, shadowy figures appear in his room, floating about a foot off the floor, dressed entirely in black, wearing hats and overcoats like clergymen. Bender couldn't properly see their faces, but he noticed they all had those same glowing eyes. They stared straight at him as the pain in his head got worse. In his agony, he hears their telepathic message. "We are dialed into your brain. We know who you are. We know what you're doing, and we're going to show you a little bit about what we're doing here on Earth, because we know if you do tell anyone, they won't believe." For Bender, these experiences were both terrifying and validating. He was happy to experience real evidence of extraterrestrial activity, since he spent so much of his life on it. But on the other hand, he experienced fear and shock during these encounters. Bender called these 3 figures the Men in Black, and after the experience, he became ill and didn't eat for 3 days. When he finally recovered, he was repeatedly visited by the entities. They induced headaches and controlled him telepathically, especially when he tried to share some of his experiences with an IFSB executive, ultimately forcing him to abandon his UFO research and cease publication of the Space Review, which documented global UFO sightings. This was a shock to everyone around him because the IFSB was very successful. In its first year, his journal had exceeded expectations and had become the go-to source for flying saucer news and theories. Bender's dreams and aspirations of making the IFSB great fell to the ground, and his decision to leave the IFSB made it difficult not only for him, but his subordinates and colleagues, as he was constantly asked questions on why he was doing so. But he never gave any definite reply, but rather in a cryptic message. Bender informed his subscribers and colleagues that the entities had warned him, "We come from a very, very far distant place in the universe. We have been coming and going from your planet for some time. We cannot allow you or anyone to interfere. In fact, we have taken many humans from this planet to cover up our operations until we are done." In the October edition of the Space Review, Albert secretly warned his followers, "The mystery of the flying saucer is no longer a mystery. The source is already known, but any information about this is being withheld by orders from a higher source." The message continued, "We would like to print the full story in Space Review, but because of the nature of the information, we are sorry that we have been advised in the negative. We advise those engaged in saucer work to please be very cautious." In November 1953, the IFSB executive team member who had known about Bender's encounter with the Men in Black contacted the local newspaper, the Bridgeport Sun-Herald, and shared the story, revealing the shutdown of the IFSB and Bender's bizarre experience. This leak sparked a media frenzy, shedding light on the mysterious circumstances surrounding Bender's departure from the IFSB. For the next few months, he was frequently visited by people who called him an addict since they believed he was doing drugs to come up with such stories, and others who came to ask him questions about his experiences. With everything going on, Bender received his final visit from the glowing-eyed beings in black, who delivered the final warning, "Don't tell anyone what you know about us, and we will leave you alone. Tell anyone, and we will kill you." This ominous threat was enough to silence Bender permanently. He kept the entire story to himself, even from his future wife. This latest encounter made Bender silent and dealt significant damage to the UFO space,
in which shadow entities interfered and thwarted somebody's research and possibly set the field back a number of years.
Following his abrupt silence in the space, enthusiasts speculated that government intervention was responsible, with many believing he had uncovered sensitive information that threatened national security. As the theories swirled, concerns for Bender's safety grew, with many thinking he had shut down his operations to protect himself from harm, whether from human or extraterrestrial sources. Bender withdrew from public view, abandoning his involvement in UFOlogy and investigations into unexplained aerial phenomena. He then shifted his focus to paranormal subjects like witchcraft, spirits, and psychic abilities, compiling books on supernatural creatures and magic that proved less controversial than his previous work. For 9 years, Bender remained quiet about his UFO experiences, until 1962, when Gray Barker, a former IFSB member and prominent UFO investigator, persuaded him to write a book about his encounters. Assuming enough time had passed since his last visit from the Men in Black in November 1953, Bender finally felt comfortable sharing his story, which he titled Flying Saucers and the Three Men. In this book, he recounted his encounters with 3 mysterious black-clad men who ordered him to cease his UFO research. These entities allegedly shared chilling insights into extraterrestrial life and technology, which Bender believed confirmed their alien origins. Bender's book narrates his personal experiences with the beings, who he claims communicated with him telepathically and showed him visions to dissuade him from further investigation. He believed these men in black were part of a secret mission to conceal the truth about UFOs from the public. His book served as a catalyst for UFO media in the future, including the Men in Black franchise, which has generated almost $2 billion in the box office since their first movie in 1997. The movie got a lot of people interested in UFOs and the theory that there is a group of people out there preventing possible alien information from leaking out to the public. Bender's name started circulating once more as the man who actually had an encounter with the extraterrestrial. However, people also began to ask important questions, like, why did the aliens choose Bender, and was this also part of their mission? Some UFOologists believed that part of this was a deliberate plan to keep the world in the dark, while the average Joe believed it was all baloney. It's safe to say that Bender's narrative was met with a significant amount of skepticism, even from the few colleagues he confided in and other UFOologists. Since his stories were solely based on his personal experiences, he lacked concrete evidence to back up his claims, which led many of his critics to believe that his stories could have easily been fabricated or could have stemmed from psychological stress. Furthermore, his refusal to reveal details regarding his visit from the Men in Black initially only served to fuel the skepticism his narrative received. Some psychologists tried to offer alternative explanations for Bender's experiences. They claimed it might have been born out of the culmination of stress and pressure from running the IFSB, his obsessions with UFOs and government conspiracies, and a rather vivid imagination. Others proposed that Bender might have experienced sleep paralysis, a condition known to cause terrifying sensations and visions of dark figures. The psychologists argued that a climax of these factors might have affected his mental state, making him prone to hallucinations and paranoid delusions. Other critics dismissed Bender's story, arguing it to be nothing more than an elaborate publicity stunt. They presumed that Bender had probably fabricated the whole encounter with the Men in Black to gather attention due to the declining interest in UFO research and his organization as a whole. This speculation was further reinforced after the release of his Flying Saucers and the Three Men. Due to the timing of the release of the book and the public's growing fascination with UFOs, extraterrestrial activity, and conspiracy theories at the time, critics suspected that Bender's narrative was just a deceitful marketing ploy, and his later silent years were all to build up anticipation and mystery, while ultimately serving to boost his financial interests. Yet other critics pointed out that Bender's narrative of the Men in Black closely resembled sci-fi literature and films of the time, which often featured government conspiracies of alien visitations and suppressing knowledge. The description of powerful shadow figures who were suppressing information about extraterrestrial life had been a common theme in UFO folklore and sci-fi media during that period. This led critics to believe that his stories were based less on real-life experiences and more on common sci-fi motifs of that era, consciously or subconsciously incorporated into his tale. However, Bender himself believed that he was special, which is why they contacted him. You see, despite the criticism and controversy Bender's narrative received, no one could deny the influence his stories have had in UFO culture and evolution of the Men in Black MIB mythology. His stories laid the groundwork for and popularized the concept of secret government agents or otherworldly entities suppressing information on extraterrestrial activities, which was a concept that had become a significant part of UFO conspiracy theories, and a template for many fictional portrayals of the MIB, like the Men in Black franchise I mentioned earlier. For decades, Bender remained haunted by the experience, rarely giving interviews and seemingly still shaken by his brush with forces beyond his understanding. He unfortunately passed away in 2016 at the age of 94, leaving behind mysteries unsolved. Although some kids in the middle of Africa might have proved Bender was right all along, and this all happened in 1994.